Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program, Jared Weiss, on to talk about the Kyrie Irving injury. Jared, before we get into that, I just need to talk to you about something that is more important than Kyrie's future long-term health.
Is it SeatGeek?
It is not SeatGeek. It is not eHarmony. It is not any of the lovely sponsors that sponsor this podcast. It is this. What do we think goes through Kyrie Irving's mind while he is on drugs from having to get surgery?
So my theory is that because Kyrie Irving always acts like he's on drugs after having surgery, I think he will be the most straightforward, clear-thinking, concise-speaking person in the world. I think the one thing that really made me laugh out of this whole thing was that this is really like a real inside basketball, I guess, with the Celtics. If you cover the Celtics beat, or if you read our coverage, you will see that quotes from Kyrie Irving are long. They are rambling sentences with commas and semicolons and M dashes and all sorts of stuff.
Sometimes they're even coherent.
It takes a lot of the hardest. So it feels like it's been forever because he hasn't played in a while and he was out for a while before that. But we have a group of the main beat writers and we team up to transcribe all the quotes so that we can save each other time. And it's always have you done your Kyrie duty? Have you done your Kyrie duty? Who hasn't done their Kyrie duty recently? Because transcribing his press conferences is really difficult from a journalistic perspective because the grammar is always really confusing. The syntax, the semantics of what he's saying, it's really hard to transcribe it. And obviously no one listening to this feels bad for us. And that's not the point. The point is he talks in such a rambling, wandering way that usually kind of finds its way back eventually and usually has something really interesting in it. And then also has something that seems really interesting, but turns out to be nothing in it. But the point is when he put out his Instagram post, it was 200 words with one period in there and just a bunch of commas and words that were randomly capitalized. It was exactly what a Kyrie Irving quote is, epitomized to a T. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever.
The hardest thing to do sometimes is accept the uncontrollable things life throws at you, period. You try consistently to learn, grow, and prepare every day to equip your mind, body, and spirit with tools to deal with some of those things. But I feel when those moments arise, they all give you a sense of unfulfillment simply because it puts some of your professional journey and goals on a brief hold. Period. It's simply a test of your perseverance and will to be present, even in the wake of what's going on, period. In this case, finding out I have an infection in my knee is definitely a moment that I now accept and move past without holding on to all the what ifs, proving the naysayers completely fucking wrong, and accomplishing the goals I've set out for my team and myself, period. This season was only a snapshot of what's to come for me. Trust me, the journey back to the top of Mount Everest continues. Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. Do you know what that means?
I actually don't really know what that means. I'm going to have to start looking that up.
Yeah, do we have a Kyrie translator for that?
I think there's an Urban Dictionary app that does that for you.
An Illuminati app.
There we go.
The best part of Kyrie's Instagram profile in general is the all-seeing Illuminati 369 eye that he has. He totally plays into this ridiculousness.
He is the ridiculousness.
I really genuinely think he is an incredibly smart human being. Don't you?
So I've had this debate with a lot of people. And also, by the way, the Sandy Rock Indian tribe is in North and South Dakota, so I'm a little confused about that reference there. But I definitely am interested in learning more about it. So we've used the phrase pseudo-intellectual with Kyrie. And I remember when he went on that JJ Redick pod and they had their discussion, which was just full of massive holes where they were questioning whether dinosaurs were real because dinosaurs weren't discovered until 1853, I think it was.
It's not that people could be stupid. It's the fact that the dinosaurs didn't exist.
Exactly. So, and I wrote I think it was 3,000 to 4,000 words where I just sat there, I listened to the pod, and I just like wrote until my fingers were bleeding. And it was just like kind of like a really detailed takedown of the mode of thinking that him and JJ were espousing. And like, they're both smart guys. And I know JJ's very smart and Kyrie is very smart. He just lets him like, I love Kyrie's intellectual curiosity and I'm very similar. I think me and Jaylen Brown like connect a lot more because I think my mode of thinking is very similar to Jaylen. I have a scholarly background. I mean, I've worked in policy and regulation for a long time on this, as in addition to what I do here. And so like that's more my background. And I appreciate philosophy and art and stuff like that, which I think is maybe more to Kyrie's background as somebody that was that's into theater and art. His expression and his thought process, I think, is a little bit more kind of up in the air, grasping to try to put all of his thoughts together. And you see when he's talking, he's looking up, he's like looking down, he rubs his third eye all the time when he's talking. And he's like, he has so much flowing in his head. He has so much. I think he suffers from information overload.
Yeah.
And not just like the negative stuff, but like obviously he is very smart. That's not the issue. It's that I think he suffers from information overload and he tries really hard. And it just oftentimes he tries too hard. And the message gets jumbled up to the point that it gets lost, and people make fun of it because they see him trying too hard, and because they think he's an athlete and he's trying too hard to prove that he's a smart guy.
I don't think it's that. No,
I think it's a part of a factor. I think it's just that people just see him trying too hard to be intellectual, and it comes across as kind of misguided compared to someone like Jaylen Brown, who, for the most part, I think is like pretty reserved about it and kind of picks his spots, and people kind of respect that.
Yeah, like with Kyrie, I think what happens is like NBA players have a lot of time to be on the internet. They have a lot of time, and I think that Jaylen probably puts his time into learning like skills. Like, can't he play like piano or something like that? Like
he could do everything to an absurd degree. He's like learning Arabic, and he's going to learn Mandarin next, and he play the piano. And I mean, he's been like working on what's essentially a dissertation on education reform in the United States. I mean, the way he dedicates his time is definitely unique to most players.
Whereas Kyrie, I think, dedicates his time, like most people on the internet do, to just searching out ridiculous things, and
which I do all the time.
Yeah, no. Like, so do I. And if I had as much time as Kyrie did, okay, I still probably wouldn't fall down these rabbit holes that Kyrie does, but like, it still comes from a place of intellectual curiosity and like just fascination with the world at large. It's absurd, and he comes off sounding like an idiot like half the time, but then there's like another half where it's just like, oh, I kind of see where you were going with that. Okay, this is, I don't know if profound's the right word, but this is...
that's the right word.
It's an interesting way to think of things.
And he does research and reads things that are very unique that I have tremendous respect for. But like the dinosaur thing was a great example. So they were talking about how they've seen some Instagram pages that were saying dinosaurs weren't discovered until 1853. And so I studied this a little bit when I was younger, so I could kind of remember some of it. I went back and they kept saying, do your own research. So I did my own research, and it's not that hard to find the research on it. It's that before dinosaurs were classified as dinosaurs in the mid-19th century, they were generally, in most of the Western world and Eastern world, known either as giant lizards or dragons. And so at a certain point, the advancements of scientific categorization and study of like genus and species that really proliferated in the 18th century got to the point where, especially because of the Industrial Revolution, scientists from all over really Eurasia were able to come together and share information, and they were able to determine that these were dinosaurs, and then that spread. So it more has to do with the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment and categorizing things that were just in a different manner, which we accept now. And I mean, most of this research and stuff has been around for thousands of years. It just wasn't until the Enlightenment that we started to categorize things in a more coherent way that was less reliant on spirituality or religion, and we generally accept that now. So that's why these kind of things happen, and this is why this is a basketball podcast.
Yeah, we really tend to go into the weeds when you and I podcast, don't we?
That's why I'm here.
That's why you're here.
I'm just a pseudo intellectual trying to bide my time.
So Let's talk about this under real pretenses. Kyrie Irving is going to have a second surgery on his left knee. The first, he had what was quoted as minimally invasive procedure, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah, I think that's 2 weeks ago, yeah.
And he was supposed to be held out for 3 to 6 weeks. You know, he might make the first round of the playoffs, might be back by the second round of the playoffs. And then Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reports today he's going to have the second procedure. It seems like, per the Instagram and per some of the other reporting, he got an infection in his left knee and has to have the infection removed, correct?
Correct.
So... Do you know what that involves? Does it involve like taking screws out of his knees? Like what is the deal there?
So I'll start from the beginning and kind of walk it through. So it started with he had what was called a tension band procedure on his knee, where when his patella split in half back in 2015, how they put it back together was they line it up. They usually put 2 pins through the 2 parts to like keep it together in place, and then they tie a wire around kind of in a square and then cross over. So it's like a box with an X through it essentially. And then they tighten it up, and then that pushes it together so that the bone can fuse back together and re-solidify. And apparently with his procedure, it was unique in that they also used screws to mount it in, apparently. I'm not 100% clear on how the screws were used, but it seems to be different than most of the surgeons that I had talked to who have NBA team surgery experience. They had said that it's usually either the tension band procedure or the screw procedure where you would screw the knee together. It looks like he did both based on everything that's happened so far. So I don't know exactly what the nature is of that surgery, but it's something pretty close along those lines. So what they initially did, and also important part, is that when they do the tension band procedure, there's the patellar tendon that goes over the kneecap, the patella. They like wrap the wire around that to keep it stable as well. So cut to 2017, 2018, irritation is being caused by that wire on his patellar tendon. So they do a little incision where the original like surgical incision took place, and they can reach in and pull out the wire. And so that's what they did. So that's why it's minimally invasive. They're not going through the knee with like an arthroscope or open surgery. They're just doing a surface incision and pulling out the wire. So when they took out the wire, they run a pathology test where they check to see if there's any virus present or any bacteria present. They identified that there was a bacterial infection present on that wire, which isn't a shock because, it's a foreign body that's been stuck in your knee for a while. You can develop a bacterial infection there. It's not that surprising that this happened.
And this is from like 2015. Right.
So this was put in June 2015, so it's been in there for almost 3 years now, and it seems like it was kind of overdue to be taken out at this point. It should have been taken out at some point, I guess, in the last year. The surgeons I talked to said usually after a couple of years, or if irritation starts to manifest, they would remove the wire and then possibly the screws eventually. But that's a different type of procedure, but same thing holds. So, it certainly lines up with Joe Vardon's original report back in January that Kyrie would need a surgery that would require him to sit out for a while, and he was kind of holding that as like the trump card to force his way out of Cleveland. So it seems that they knew that the screws would have to come out at some point because he just has to have the screws removed at some point once it's healed, and he knew that he could kind of do that anytime he wanted in the next couple of years, and he was going to use that as a trump card to sit out this season if Cleveland wouldn't trade him. That's at least allegedly what he was going to do. Who knows if he was, but I mean, it's obvious now that he had that potential to do that. But so the key is, so when they found the bacterial infection on the wire, because the wire was attached to the screws, that means that the infection is also likely happening on the screws, which are still in his knee. You can't have a bacterial infection in your knee because, you can't have a bacterial infection that kills you eventually. So they don't want him to get MRSA, which has, destroyed Grant Hill's career, has destroyed many people's careers. It's a potentially deadly virus. So they don't want any sort of foreign body infection being caused. So they determined we got to take out the screws, and now's the time to do it because it's a 4 to 5 month timetable for return, they're saying, and it's the beginning of April right now, so 5 months from now, it would be early September, right before training camp is starting up. It seems like the perfect time to get it done, and they knew that the chances of making the finals, and especially of winning the finals this year, were pretty slim, so there's no need. I mean, they have their entire organization invested in Kyrie. It's like they gotta do whatever they can for this to work out for the long run.
Yeah, so here is kind of the overarching question now with Kyrie. I mean, it's very clear that the 2015 injury led to this 2018 surgery. It's literally a direct correlation because the band and the screws put in led to the infection, which has now led to this surgery, which is necessary.
Absolutely.
The big question here now is, how stable will his knee be going forward? Is it totally healthy now from the stability and having recovered over the course of the last 3 years? Or is there a future here of long-term repercussions of his left knee not always kind of being right?
So the answer is it should be fine. They have maintained that it's structurally sound. From what I've heard, there's no issue. That the kneecap and the tendon are healed, and that's not the issue. The issue is the bacterial infection can undo that, because if he has a bacterial infection, it's not cured. I mean, it could eat away. It could weaken the knee. It can eat away at the knee itself, eat away at tendons, and that can cause an issue that's even way worse than an orthopedic injury, potentially. It could be a severe tissue issue. Yeah, well, it's not even a hot take. It's just like, hey, this is what a bacterial infection is. I mean, yeah. So
hot take, bacterial infection, bad.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, so I'm going out on a limb here. I am not a doctor, so but I'm going to assume that the bacterial infection was less than ideal. So
are you
assuming
more Dr.
that
Drake Ramore or the guy on The Simpsons?
I'm more Dr. Nick. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey everybody.
Everybody.
So that's actually really good. So yeah, I mean, if they clean up the infection and it goes away, which isn't like a guarantee, it is an infection, so they're trying to contain it and isolate it and remove it, then it should be fine if they get rid of it. I mean, the concern would be they go in there and they find that there's a bunch of infected tissue and they have to cut away a bunch of cartilage or even like other parts of the knee that might be infected, or however they decide to treat it. I think the concern would be that they cause a bunch of damage to the knee by just cutting away so much stuff that he needs a lot more time to heal, and the healing process takes longer. But I'm assuming that's baked into the 4 to 5 month layoff. Yeah.
I mean, the key here is just hoping that he doesn't continue to need follow-up procedures on this, and that what they have to remove in terms of the infected cartilage, tissue, muscle, whatever it's going to be here. I would imagine it's probably not much muscle given the area that it's going to be in.
It's probably very localized, right, to just like the screws. I mean, I'd imagine it's not like he has like a whole corrosion issue there where his knee's completely destroyed. Like, it's probably just like the infection is right there in the immediate area of what's touching the screws.
Right. And like the other thing is here too, I mean, they did just open up his knee. Like they probably have a pretty good idea of what they're looking at going into this.
Maybe not necessarily, because when they went in for the knee, the tension wire removal, they're just going in through the top with a scalpel and just pulling it out as if like you're just like kind of cutting through the top of your skin to pull out like a thorn kind of thing. I mean, it's a little deeper than that, but that's kind of what it's like. So
you really can't see like what's happening through the rest of the knee. So
they're not looking at the screws in the patella necessarily. Maybe they were able to. Obviously I don't know. And I mean, they could have put like a scope camera in there maybe or something like that, but I highly doubt it. But no, they didn't put a scope in there. But the point is they're going to have to do that now. I don't know if I don't know if they have exactly. I don't know if they have to do a scope for this, which is usually ideal because that's much less invasive than like an open surgery where they like slice you open and go all the way through, which is way worse. So I don't know if it's going to be arthroscopic or not. I haven't done the research on the surgery yet to know how that works, but they can do imaging and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know how much that helps with determining if there's a bacterial infection. It probably, I mean, if there was corrosion from the bacterial infection, maybe that would show up on an MRI or a CAT scan. But I think they're going into this. It seems, based on the way that the press release was put together and based on what we know about the initial procedure, it kind of seems like they figured out that the infection was there based on doing a pathology test of the wire that they took out of him, and they're kind of doing, it's more of like a ipso facto kind of thing where we found that the wire has bacteria on it, therefore we can determine that it's most likely that the screw has bacteria on it, and therefore we need to go in and take it out. So I don't think they really have much of an idea of what the extent of this infection is, or whether it even is infected on the screws, but they're assuming it is. I don't. It doesn't seem, based on the clues that are out there, that they have an idea of exactly what they're getting into. But I think the knee would be like they would probably know if like his entire knee was like a giant bowl of Swiss cheese. Like I don't think that's the case here.
Yeah, that would be a problem for the Boston Celtics moving forward. But before we get into the long-term ramifications of it, let's talk a little bit about the short-term ramifications. I mean, they were hoping to have Kyrie back at least by the second round, from what I understand, right?
Yes.
And it's now very clear that that is not going to happen. I mean, does this just totally tank them to get to the conference finals, do we think?
I would say that it makes them pretty even in the conference finals against Philly now. I think they would have been they would have been the favorite against Philly if they had Kyrie back. Now I'd say it puts them pretty even. Cleveland's, I mean, right now Cleveland's kicking Washington's ass while we're watching this, or while we're recording this. I'm assuming that they're going to, I mean, they're starting Jeff Green, so they're going to be amazing, I'm sure. But I would make Cleveland a pretty clear favorite if the Celtics meet up against them. I still think Cleveland's going to be better than Philly. So I don't think they're going to make the conference finals. That I wouldn't predict it. I mean, who knows if they're going to make it past the first round? They need Rozier to play great if they're going to make it past the first round, and they're counting on Jalen and Jason, who it's not really clear what to expect out of those guys in the playoffs. They should be really good, but I don't really know what to expect right now.
Yeah, it's difficult to really know because the Celtics haven't even had like their full complement of players that they're going to have for the playoffs here for a little while now. Like Marcus Morris has been out. Marcus Smart has also been out. Both of the Marcuses have been out now at this stage. And you would assume that they're going to be back for the playoffs at some point and they're going to be able to make an impact. And Boston actually kind of needs both of them to be able to create mismatches for opposing teams that they're going to play. And, you know, it certainly seems like they're going to be faced off against one of Milwaukee or Washington or Miami. Is there a team in that group that you would particularly want to play if you're Boston?
See, that's the funny thing is, and also for one, if Morris is fine, but if he were to get hurt, they would not make it out of the first round. There's just no way in hell. He's like, right now, he is arguably their second best player on the team. So,
how much like money would I have had to lay on the floor for you to say, I will take that money and I will give you odds on Marcus Morris being the second best player on the Celtics on Thursday, April 5th, whenever they acquired him for Avery Bradley?
You would have to tell me that the entire team broke its leg in a bus crash, except Marcus missed the bus, for me to believe that. I mean, coming into the year, I figured he'd be the seventh best player on the team. So that means that five of their best players are gone, are down. So, which is true. Right now, they're without four of their core 9 guys right now. So, and Rozier's been hurt, and Larkin has been out sick for the last week or two. But Larkin was super sick, like he was in the hospital for a little while. So, I mean, it's insane. It really is insane. But also, I mean, Mook has really evolved throughout the year. His shot selection's gotten better. I mean, all the garbage shots he was taking early in the year, he's done a great job of cutting down on those. You know, if anybody that listens to this podcast follows Weird Celtics Twitter, Weird Celtics Twitter is one of the great places in the world, one of the great bastions of hope in our society. And Mook was the star of it early on because it was like there's like the meme of the guy with his girlfriend looking back at the other girl, and like his girlfriend would be easy wide open layup, and then the other girl in the foreground would be double crossover fadeaway jumper, because like he only took the most inefficient shots in basketball. His like favorite shot is when he's getting guarded 1-on-1 on the elbow. He gets down low, does a double through the legs crossover into a pull up 20-footer, and like it clanks so hard, it's so funny. It's like a low line drive shot that just clanks straight off of the back of the rim half of the time. It's just a terrible shot. But
the funniest part of that was, so like, I don't remember what I was doing one day, but like I went through and like looked at a bunch of like Marcus Morris mid-range jumpers for fun, and eventually I started looking at Brad Stevens. like on the sideline to see what he would do whenever he like
great.
just randomly pulled up. Around like January or February though, he kind of just like was like, oh, okay, what can I do? He's going to do this.
Yeah, because at first they were like, God damn it. And then eventually they're like, oh, God damn it.
Yeah, and it's just like, what can I do? I don't get it. Like, he's going to do it. And we need to play him anyway. So I have no recourse here.
So yeah, it's it's been so entertaining, and like I love Mook because he's a really cool guy. I've really enjoyed getting to know him. He's really funny. His post game pressers are always great quotes, and he's so ridiculous to watch because he is an unstoppable force sometimes.
He's so strong.
Lately, it's been a lot of the time. He's so powerful. He's like just a good enough ball handler to be a good dribble penetrator from the elbow. And when he's hitting a shot, he's an all-star caliber player when he's hitting a shot. It's incredible to watch. I mean, he drops 20 whenever they need him to. And he's been huge for them this year. And his defense, he takes some plays off, but overall his defense has been really good. And he defends the 3 and the 4 pretty well, so he can be out there with Horford. He can be out there when they go really big. I mean, his versatility and consistency has been the one saving grace, I think, for this team more than anything, besides obviously everything that Al Horford does as a consistent presence for them. And Horford will always go unmentioned because it's like he's the foundation of everything. So you don't notice the foundation, you notice the nice furniture in the living room, which is Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier and Jaylen Brown, or like the sturdy stairwell, which is Marcus Morris or whatever it is, or the garage, which is Gershon Yabusele. So I mean, we
just had a weird Celtics Twitter moment on this podcast.
I think of myself as like the Celtics beats embodiment of weird Celtics Twitter, because I do it. I did come up in the Reddit generation, and I do love myself a good meme. So I eat that shit up all the time. But so it's funny because there's been so much hype, especially early in the season, about all this exciting young talent they have, and how, I mean, Rozier's really evolved into a really good player, like a good starting caliber NBA player.
Yeah, he's definitely a top 30 point guard in the league now. Like, no question in my mind now. Yeah.
And then Tatum and Brown, I think, oscillate between being like good starters and then young guys who are still figuring it out. But so there's been all these moments throughout the year where these young guys kind of fade. They look kind of lost out there. They look physically intimidated a little bit. And Mook, whenever he senses that the team is kind of like flailing a little bit, he just like locks in and just bullies people, and you just really see the kind of consistent mental demeanor that comes with being a veteran like that. And Shane Larkin's been doing it too, and Shane's been really good for this team. But seeing that from Mook, I think, has given me a newfound respect for him, because his reliability and leadership has just been so vital for this team. And it's, I think, one of the biggest reasons why they've been able to weather the storm, and why Brad is ascended back into the top of the Coach of the Year conversation, which I think changed really drastically, really in March, just because they had such a strong March despite literally just like the walls crumbling around them. And I think Mook was probably one of the 2 or 3 biggest reasons that happened.
Well, like, the crazy thing is you're mentioning like leadership and reliability with Marcus Morris, and before he got to Boston, like, no one would have said those words about him.
And I didn't expect that out of him, especially after how things went down in Detroit. Like, I really did not expect that. It's been a pleasant surprise.
But then you look at Detroit and you understand that it's a flaming dumpster fire. And, like, it makes sense that once he gets to an actual culture and an actual, like, system that makes sense, that he can do this stuff. Like, he's actually a very talented basketball player. He was a lottery pick for a reason. He got a rookie extension with his brother for a reason. Like, he's actually a very good basketball player.
He is, when he's not causing trouble with his brother. He's really good.
Splitting those two up may have saved their career.
Yeah, probably. It might have saved America, honestly. But I've been covering the league for like 7 years now, and this has been not only has it been one of the most entertaining teams I've gotten to cover, but Mook himself has been one of the most fascinating guys I've gotten to cover. So I've really enjoyed it.
What do we think that Marcus Smart is going to be able to bring this team? I mean, it seems like Terry has kind of taken over this point guard position in a pretty significant way. I would imagine that Marcus will get some time there whenever he gets back, just because probably don't want to play Shane Larkin in the playoffs that much just because of the defensive deficiencies that he's going to give you just due to his size. Like, I think that if they can just play Terry and then play Marcus at the point whenever Terry's out, that would really, really help them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Shane's been really good defensively this year. It's mostly as a pest on the perimeter.
Yeah, he tries hard. Like,
yes.
Look, I'm not, like, shitting on Shane Larkin, like, as a defender. Like, he really does give effort, but he's also, like, 5'11", and just
I don't know if he's that tall.
Contest. Yeah, like, he can't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 5'11" and a half, and I look down at him at least an inch or two, so I think he's more like 5'10" or so, but, I think when they're in drop coverage or ice coverage, then it makes sense for him to be out there. If they're switching, though, that's when they really get caught. But the thing is, if they're going up against a team that has a real weakness with shooting, then it's not a problem for them to switch because they can just hide him over there. They did that with Isaiah last year, who Isaiah was like another guy who, you know, I mean, the numbers make him look horrible on defense. You watch him play defense, and he does put in the effort. And when they're in ice or drop coverage, he looks like he's getting by fine. But then when they're in switch coverage and he gets switched onto somebody with the ball, it's kind of a train wreck. So,
well, yeah, it's like a 1.75 point per possession possession if he's switched on to a bigger player. He just has no recourse.
He can't really do much about it. So, you know, Washington took advantage of that last year where they kept running plays. They would run like horn sets to get Otto Porter a completely isolated high post on Isaiah, and he'd just back him down and shoot over him like nothing was there. Shane, to Shane's credit, he's really good at pestering the ball when it gets down in this airspace. So guys are not comfortable dribbling around him like they were with Isaiah, and part of that was Isaiah was like the star of the team, so he couldn't give you that level of intensity on defense because it's really rare that you can do that. And Shane he does that. I mean, when he's out there, he is running his ass off the entire time. So he's definitely been a positive for the team defensively, and he's a playmaker defensively. He presses full court, so he's won them a bunch. I mean, they've won probably 4 games I can think of off the top of my head, mostly because they threw him in there late in his defensive pressure, got them transitions, got them extra possessions. That's how they won the game. So he's the kind of guy, kind of like what Gerald Green was last year for them, where I think he's gonna be a huge impact for 1 or 2 games that might be the game breaker. He might be like that X factor guy that shifts it in their favor.
Yeah, I can at least understand that. I still think he's probably going to be more of a negative than a positive in 7-game playoff series, just because I think teams are going to find a way to take advantage of him pretty easily.
Which they always do.
Yeah, and it's just the way that playoff series work. You know, you start to lock in on matchups. You start to really, hone in on scouting. It just becomes really, really difficult. Let's talk about the Boston offense without Kyrie real quick. So Boston is 18th in offensive rating this year with Kyrie and without Kyrie. Just that's their general offensive rating, and they're 7.4 points per possession per 100 possessions worse without Kyrie on the floor. Over the last, how long has Kyrie been out? Probably like 7 games, something like that, somewhere in that range.
I think it's been more than that, actually. I'll have to pull it up, but I mean, he only played, I think, 53 games this year.
60, there we go. 12. It's been 12 games. They have a 101.9 offensive rating in those 12 games since Kyrie has been out. That's a problem, I would say. Like that's a significant problem for them going forward. They need to be able to get consistent offense. I'm a little bit worried that they're going to start going to Greg Monroe like more consistently in the playoffs and just deciding, hey, we're going to run Greg out there because we know he can get his shot when it's just not an efficient look.
Well, first off, thank you for using his nickname, Greg. Secondly, that's another weird Celtics Twitter joke. So they have been doing that lately because they have no backup point guard right now. Actually, right now they had one game just now against Milwaukee where they literally did not have a point guard. But because of that, they can't get any dribble penetration with their second unit, and they've been trying to run stuff like pinch post stuff with Monroe, trying to get him the ball in the seams or get him post ups, and I probably at the end of the day it probably was like a 50-50, honestly, where it seemed like half of the time he was getting stuff done, but it was a total shit show. It was hard to watch, and it's not going to work at the playoffs, especially because the teams that they're going to match up against can handle him. I mean, I think all three of those teams have somebody that can match up well. Milwaukee obviously knows him very well, too, so they know how to attack him. I mean, he was just there. Miami has Whiteside, who will probably be on the floor a little bit while he's out there. And then, of course, Washington they have Markieff, they have Gortat. I mean, they've got bodies that can handle him. So
shout out Mike Scott.
And I was about to say, shout out Mike Scott, who's been great this year. So, yeah, I don't think the Moose is going to be super effective for them, but he's another guy where they're gonna have at least one or two moments where the opposing team goes small and they decide we're going to go big and just bet on Moose, and Moose is probably going to get like 8 points in the quarter and it's going to look really pretty. But also his defense has still been really, really bad. So even in the moments where he's scoring a bunch of points, he tends to also be giving up a ton of points on the other end. And we saw Toronto kept attacking him with all this like high-low action in the fourth quarter last night or Wednesday night, and that was a total train wreck because he would always be caught in no man's land, stuck on the balls of his feet, facing the wrong direction. He's not able to really execute the Celtics pick and roll coverages very well, and it hasn't really worked. So he's out there to get offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds. If they put him in the pick and roll, it's going to be really ugly. They're not going to want to rely on him, and they're probably going to be small most of the time.
Yeah, and then the other part of this is, too, I mean, Terry Rozier has been awesome this year. I'm a little bit worried about teams being able to kind of game plan against him in the playoffs just a little bit. Like, Terry tries really hard, and that, kind of allows him to get by, and he's really, really improved as a jump shooter, and I think that is going to be his saving grace, if anything, in the playoffs, because, shooting is kind of the great equalizer, especially when you can do it off the bounce, which he's kind of proven the ability to do over the course of the last really 2 months, I would say. But at the same token, I'm worried about him just being the lead guy for this offense because he still doesn't finish well at the basket. He's still not a guy that has much of a, game inside of 20 feet. And I just think teams will try and take that away.
So I think that last point is a little overblown, although it's I think statistically accurate still that his field goal percentage at the rim is below average. But he's pretty crafty at the rim. I think one of the main reasons why it's low is that he takes really high degree of difficulty shots a lot of the time.
Sure.
And especially because he's been
fair.
Yeah, and he's been on ball and executing pick and roll action more, so like the defense has been keying in on him more. So that's part of it. Can
we just kind of talk about this?
Sure.
I mean, he's in the third percentile in half court shooting at the rim this year. He's shooting 37% in half court settings at the rim.
Oh, it's 37% now? Oh, wow. Okay, you know why? Because I usually look at transition numbers too, so that makes sense.
He's bad at the rim in half court settings.
Well, he misses a lot of. He'll get a kind of a tricky shot but he'll still get the finger roll off right near the rim, and he still misses it a lot of the time. And the funny thing is, it's gotten better. I mean, I used to have a thing where he only had, I think, one dunk coming into the season in his career, and so whenever he would dunk, I would tweet in all caps, "Terry Rozier could dunk," and it took him until halfway through this year that he got to more than 4 dunks, and now he dunks really regularly. And
he has the athleticism too.
Yeah, well, he has like a 42-inch vertical. I mean, the guy gets insane hang time. So I did an interview with him earlier this year. I'm trying to remember exactly what we talked about, but he said that a big thing for him was he was just trying to learn how to be confident with contact in the air, and that's something that he's still learning. And I think he's finally gotten from the point of I'm now confident enough to at least go up and try to dunk and not worry about it. But he's not at the point where he feels like he can take the contact and still maintain concentration and finish. While Jaylen Brown, who also has really bad numbers for finishing at the rim, he's gotten tremendously better at that. And he now actually has figured out how to go straight up, bring the ball back down, and turn his shoulder into the defender, and then put it back up and try to finish. And he gets really close, and there's a lot of them roll out. But I think both of those guys, you can see that they're just they're getting right there, and they just don't drop the shot very often. It might just be kind of a touch thing at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see the way that they shoot off the dribble and spot up from 3. So we can see that they can shoot really freaking well. But learning that delicate touch around the rim, it takes learning, concentration, which they're getting better at, and just getting used to the kind of the severity of physical contact around the rim. But those guys both look to me like they're going to end up being really good finishers within the next couple of years. So I'm not too concerned about it from a long-term perspective.
I'm worried about Terry long-term. I'll say that. Like, I just think he tries really hard to finish at the rim, and he looks pretty finishing at the rim because of that finger roll, but the numbers are really bad. Like, they're really bad. Jalen, I think, will be good. Jalen is at 55% this year in half-court settings. That's a little bit below average, but, like, that's fine. The part of Jalen's game that's improved dramatically this year is shooting off the dribble. Like, the fact that he can actually, like, take one dribble, take, a right-to-left crossover and pull up. Like, he can actually do that stuff now, and that's huge for him.
Yeah, he's, like, a competent, like, scorer now, which is
shocking.
Pretty great for a 21-year-old. Like, he's going to be very good. And people are so focused on the fact that, like, Tatum's a better, like, what ISO ball handler and, and stuff like that. But, I mean, Jalen's shown he's going to be a good scorer in the NBA. He may not be quite as prolific as Tatum, who somebody said recently they think Tatum's going to be a 30-point per game scorer. I mean, I certainly see the potential pathway to it. I don't know if he's going to be that good, but he's going to be good as hell, that's for sure. But Jalen could be – I've always compared Jalen to basically kind of like Andre Iguodala with a better jump shot. And I think Iguodala was always really underrated when he was in Philly because he was put in the primary role, and he's not quite a primary guy. And then he goes to Golden State and he wins Finals MVP. But even though I don't think he was offensively quite as good in Golden State as he was in Philly,
right, or in Denver even.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So, like, he was a little bit past his prime at that point. So I think if you see the guy that Iguodala was for that Warriors team, I think we could see Jalen becoming that guy, but with some of the scoring, really with the scoring capability that Iguodala had, plus he's going to be a more competent jump shooter. So, I mean, that player is basically a perennial all-star, and Brown doesn't seem that far from being an all-star at this point. I mean, right now he's still inconsistent. If he does what he can do on a consistent basis next year, he'll probably be close to being probably an 18-point scorer, getting 5 rebounds a game or so. He'd be making his way towards all-star contention pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think he's one leap away from all-star status, and same with Jason, honestly, which is insane. Yeah, like I think he's one leap away from all-star status. And I said last year during the draft process, I thought Jason would probably be a top 5 scorer at some point during his career. 30 points is a lot. 30 points is a bunch.
And I don't think it will be quite that high, but it'll be a lot, that's for sure. And also, if he stays in Boston, he's not going to be on a team. I mean, he's going to be on a team with 2 other elite scorers anyway, at least, if not 3. So that's not going to happen here.
You mentioned a perfect little segue there. So the last thing I want to ask you about with Kyrie here is the long-term ramifications of Kyrie Irving in a Boston Celtics uniform. He has 1 year left on his contract. Well, theoretically is 2, but the last year is a player option. 1 year, $20.1 million. Can they extend him this summer? Like, is that a road you want to go down if you're Boston?
Nope. I would not do it. You gotta see him come back. You gotta see the full recovery.
Even knowing that he's say I am willing to take an extension now, or I'm gonna hit unrestricted free agency in next summer. Like, do you do it?
I don't know, because he's going to be making like $45-50 million on that extension, and I mean, the one mitigating factor there is that he is structurally sound, as they say. So I think that gives him an entirely different level of confidence compared to most people that had knee surgery. I mean, this is about removing screws, cleaning up an infection. If that's really all it is, then I say fine. But they know, I mean, they know the situation. They know what it really is. They know what the risks are. So, from here it's because we're looking at it from the outside in of, it seems like it should be fine, but also it seemed like it should be fine a few weeks ago. So what's really going on? It's hard to imagine there's another layer past this, because this is certainly the layer that we thought could be past that first procedure. I don't know, maybe he needs like a spine transplant now or something like that. Who knows? But it seems to me like this should be the end of the issue. And if that is the case, then it probably should be fine to go ahead with it.
Well, I wonder if, too, in Kyrie's case, if he would be willing to potentially do something like a 2-year extension so that he can get up to that the 10 plus year max window that he can get to, because right now he is in his 7th season in the NBA, so he's only eligible for 30% of the max as opposed to 35% of the max that 10 plus veterans are eligible for. He's also, if I remember correctly, has not made the All-NBA in 2 of the last 3 years, correct?
I believe that's correct.
So in this scenario, I actually think that it actually kind of might make a little bit more sense for him to potentially go down the road of a shorter term extension. And I think it might make sense for Boston to go down that road too. Just say like, hey, we're willing to give you, 2 more years on top of your contract. Let's see where it goes from here.
I think I'd be pretty interested if I'm Boston and I'm so concerned about the health of the knee, then I think it's a no-brainer. I would take the gamble of adding 2 more years and worrying whether or not his knee's going to remain healthy, because you can deal with that. But 3 more on top of that, that's when it becomes, that could be a franchise killer as opposed to something they have to navigate. And they already have been dealing with Gordon being out for the year. So, it's like, it's a little too much cap risk for them to be able to survive. So, I don't know. It's just right now there's so much unknown. I'm going to operate off of the idea that he comes back from this and the whole ordeal's over. Because if they get rid of the bacterial infection and he is structurally sound and all of the damage caused by the surgery is about to happen as far as cutting out cartilage or tissue or whatever it is, if that all is resolved, there shouldn't be anything else here except for that knee tendonitis that he's always had, which they seem to not think would be a long-term concern, most likely, although that could pop up again back once he gets to his 30s. But he just turned 26 2 weeks ago, so they don't have to worry about his 30s for a long time. So It should be safe to commit to him long-term, but I do like the idea of being able to just commit for 3 more seasons after this, because they're going to pay him. That's not the question. I think the only question would be whether he would be willing to stay. And they should be pretty confident that they're going to be the front runner for the title for the next few years if they have everybody healthy, or at least right there with whomever else is the other major contenders. But they should be on the top tier, even with Golden State, most likely. They might not be better, but they should be on that tier.
You would hope. And who knows what's going to happen with Golden State? Who knows if they're going to want to pay all of the exorbitant luxury tax that it's going to take to keep all 4 of those players together moving forward. And
health too.
And health, of course, as we've learned this year, too. And
continuity. There's a lot of factors.
For sure. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are going to want full-scale extensions at some point. They have earned that right, and it's hard for me to envision that they're not going to chase money.
Hey, it's people think that money's not that big, and then you think about the idea of chasing $50 million, and you're like, you know what, I'll take the $50 million.
No joke, especially when you're Klay Thompson. Klay, does not have he hasn't made wild money. He's up to 58 million. He'll be at 76 million before this contract ends. But by new NBA standards, that's, it sounds stupid to say, but that's not wild money.
Yeah, think about how much weed he could buy with all that. That'd be pretty incredible.
It's a fair point. He can probably buy a whole dance studio too.
That's all he's ever wanted.
Jared, tell the people where they can find your work.
You can find me on Twitter at Jared Weiss NBA and on the Instagrams as well. Same thing.
Jared, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. I swear to God, at some point I'm going to talk about the Western Conference on this podcast, but also it keeps changing nightly. So the shelf life of a podcast like this is just so minimal for the Western Conference every single night, but I'll still try and talk about it over the course of the weekend. The Kyrie news kind of broke that, though. It was kind of a necessary topic to talk about. I know we talk about the East a lot. I know we talk about the Celtics a lot. I apologize, but until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.